Okay, good people. Welcome to Sports Cards Anonymous. This is the slow burn where we have a conversation about cards. I talk about building a personal museum. And as part of that, I say that, the cards that you're trying to pick up, they need to fit your scope of collection. And for me, they need to pass my stunning standard. And I want to expand on that idea of the stunning standard a little bit and talk about how do we determine our own stunning standard. Got a good fire going here tonight. Mobile fire pit. It's really fantastic. One of the things that happens when we buy cards, the dopamine monster, right? This is one I'm pretty big on. You're scrolling eBay, you're watching YouTube, they're talking about players, that ignites thoughts in your head. Then you, as you're scrolling eBay, you go search for those players that maybe are not in the core of your scope of collection, but you like them for whatever reason. And you're just looking for deals. And you'll scroll eBay for 3 or 4 hours. You'll pick up some, value cards. You might pick up a nice card or two, whatever. Card comes in 2 to 3 weeks later. You get the card in. You see it. It makes you happy the moment you have it. You take a picture. You post it to Instagram. You enjoy your 15 likes. You put it in a box and you move on with your life. That's the honeymoon phase, because what happens is a year later, you forgot that card's over there because you didn't really care about it. You were just kind of killing time on a Thursday night. 3 years later, that card is still in your box. And if you buy like this, if you have this habit in your life, which I have, right? The reason I'm talking about this is because this is something I've done and I had to walk away from, right? Because I realized it wasn't good for me. If you have that habit in your life, what happens is over 3 years, instead of having this cohesive collection that you're content with, you have amassed a massive pile of cards, and you have to decide, do you want the cards, yes or no? And largely, right, if you're not thinking about the scope of collection, if you're not thinking about stunning standard, you're going to say, no, I don't actually want these cards. So then you have to decide, okay, am I going to sell the cards, or am I going to keep them, right? And if you sell them, that's going to be a lot of work. It's a lot of work to list everything on eBay and get everything, listed and sold and comped and all this junk. And if you don't, then you would just end up amassing a hoard. And where I say, we need to build our own personal museums. If you amass this hoard and you don't sell, you end up building your own personal mausoleum instead of a museum. So, the dopamine monster. That sucker comes creeping in the night and leads you to make decisions for your collection out of your budget that in the long run, you're not going to be happy with, right? So how do we get away from that? How do we build our museum? We look at the stunning standard, and everybody's standard is going to be a little bit different, but there's going to be parts of it that are the same across the board. For me, when I think about my stunning standard, one of the things that's important to me is the card needs to be obviously good. I don't want a ton of cards in my collection. I really kind of don't want any cards in my collection that I need to explain why it's interesting. I don't want to have to explain why it's a good card. I want the card to be able to speak for itself. In the art world, they do have a term for this. It's called wall power. Wall power is about pieces of art that if you just put it on the wall, people 20, 30, 40 feet away always notice it. They always notice it and are drawn to it. And, you probably had that in your own collection. You have a couple cards that always stand out to you. This is really what started me on this journey of thinking about this, is like, as I go through my collection, as I filter through it, there's always some cards that I always stop and look and appreciate. And then that's when I started to really question myself and say, what if my entire collection was like this? And then that's, you know, that's kind of how all this is come really to the point that it's at. So, and the same thing, when you walk around a show, you go to the Dallas show, you go to the National, whatever, you see thousands of cards, you see hundreds of cases, and you've all probably had this experience where you see a case, you know, you're walking by and one card immediately stands out to you. It immediately draws you in. Maybe, you know, it's a high-end card of a player you like, or it's just a really high-end card in general, right? You may not even be interested in buying it, but you can stop and appreciate it, right? That's wall power. That's what that is, right? It's just, that card is obviously special. It can be for a variety of reasons, right? I'm not saying that there's only one reason for a card to be special or artwork to be special, but wall power. That's something that I gravitate towards in my stunning standard. Every card that I look at, every card that I look at adding to my collection, on its own, it needs to be awesome, right? I need to be able to see it and think, this is a great card. Now, I got show notes here because every time I do one of these videos, I leave off a couple notes, right? I usually go noteless, but I got a couple notes for myself here. Another thing that I really want to think about, and this is during the buying process. This is as you're going through the buying process. Instead of thinking, oh, is this card a good value? Try to think, after I've owned this card for 2 years, am I still going to enjoy looking at it? Right? That's a big one. Because I think, for myself, again, you know, for myself, you scroll on eBay, you're looking at cards, great value, great value, great value, and you're like, I'm going to pick these up. These are good values. Why wouldn't I pick these up? It's a great deal. You know, but what happens exactly to that story, right? And then you getting it in the mail, putting it away for a year, blah, blah, blah. A year goes by, you look to sell it, and comps are near about what you paid. Maybe it's up 10%, but now it's a hassle because you gotta list it, you gotta sell it. It just ends up not being worth the time, effort, and money that you put into it. You bought it because it was a good value, not necessarily because you thought it was special, right? You liked it, but it wasn't necessarily special. And after 1, 2, 3 years of owning it, you're really not interested in having it anymore. It's not special to you. The player maybe has, you know, kind of gone out of the news. It's not a good value anymore. It just kind of is what it is. It's not something you really want. So when you're thinking about what cards do I want to buy, or if you're thinking about, am I serious about buying, you know, this card that I'm looking at, will you appreciate it 3 and 4 years from now? After owning it for 3 and 4 years, will you still be able to look at it and be like, this is an awesome card, right? I've been collecting since 1999. I have cards from back in the day that I still look at after owning for 20 years. That for, you know, a variety of reasons I look at and I'm like, these are awesome. I mean, awesome. All through COVID, I was buying and selling, you know, all sorts of stuff. I mean, I never really took a break. There was about maybe 1 year, 2017 is probably about the only year since 1999 that I really wasn't buying cards. I've probably picked up, you know, there was a handful of cards during COVID that I still look at and I'm like, these were awesome. Awesome, awesome. Most of my regrets, you know, Sports Cards Investors, they just had a post out and they asked for a feedback on what cards do you regret not buying? And I thought about it a little bit and I was like, you know, I don't have any regrets about the cards I didn't buy. My biggest regrets are on the cards that I sold. I could list off probably 5 to 10 cards right now that I'm like, I probably shouldn't have sold that. It was a pretty special card. I enjoyed looking at it. You know, I wish I still had that. All that to say, when you find cards that you can have an appreciation for many years after buying it, those are stunning. Those are stunning for whatever reason, you know, for you, those meet the stunning standard. And those are the cards that we want to focus bringing into our collection. Because if we're not bringing those in, then over time, you're going to get tired of having that card. And again, we're going to go through that whole loop of you not wanting it. And to tie that back to the art world a little bit, I mean, this is important. I do think this particular point is important. Tonight we are smoking a Cohiba out of Nicaragua. Good luck saying that. Never gonna say that right, but it's a Cohiba. Not my favorite. Preferred my Dominican cigar that I had last time, but you know, it's all right. In the art world, they have a couple different phrases about value. So there's historical value, right? You know, some caveman painting from 5,000 years ago, it's not exactly well done. You know, a fourth grader could paint it, but it has historical value because it's old. And then there's aesthetic value. In aesthetic value, now we're talking more the Renaissance. We're talking Da Vinci, right? We're talking, you know, more recently, Picasso. Let the noise pass. These are peak technical skills in the painting world, in the art world. And because they are so wonderfully done, they have value. Now, of course, as time goes on, they also have the historical value as well. Obviously, you know, obviously that's true. But on their own, they carry aesthetic value. Now, when I think about the sports card world, instead of historical value and aesthetic value, I think of aesthetic value and current event value, current news value, if you would. I didn't come up with a great term with this yet, sorry. But when you look at cards in the sports world, the ones that we maybe tend to buy and over time want to get out of, it's because it's players that are in the news, they're in the now, they're in the, you know, they're in all the videos, everyone's talking about them. Their card and their market is super hyped up and, you know, probably maybe at its peak. You know, this is especially true for young players, right? We see it all the time. Think about a young quarterback. We're in the playoffs right now. You know, Drake May or Bo Nix or, you know, whoever, you know, their card prices are probably through the moon right now. And you may want one. That's FOMO. That's FOMO coming in because it's in the current events. It's in the news. Even if you're a Patriots fan or a Broncos fan, you may think, well, that's my team. I have to have one. No, you don't. You don't have to have one. You can buy it 10 years later and still enjoy and be happy, right? So that current news, that current value, maybe we'll call it news value. Let's call it news value. That news value is, it's hyped. Everyone's talking about it. It's what every dealer wants at the National, blah, blah, blah. You know, all that kind of stuff. That's the stuff we want to avoid. We want to avoid cards in that bucket, right? Because that's, again, the dopamine monster. It's just news and dopamine and you trying to be a part of the moment or, you know, capture a part of the moment when if you can just separate yourself from those urges a little bit, wait a few years, you are going to get a significant discount on that kind of stuff. I'll give you a good example. This just happened. This really blew my mind. Really blew my mind. I'm really excited about my collection videos. I'm going to do one collection video a month showing my pickups for the month. And for the most part, you know, it's only going to be a handful of cards. It's not going to be, you know, 500 cards. It's going to be 5 to 10 probably. And a card I just got, I won at auction. It is a 2013 Bowman Chrome Blue Auto of Carlos Correa. Now, Carlos Correa, he didn't have, they didn't stamp his first Bowman as first Bowman. So it is his first Bowman, but there's no stamp. And I like, for my own collection, I only really buy blue or gold parallels. You know, if you're looking at any sort of chrome card, I always stick to blue or gold. Those are the colors I like the most. So I waited. This card went screaming cheap at auction, right? Low 100s. And then I was just kind of curious, historically, what has this card gone for? And in 2018, November 2018, so a year after they had won the World Series in 2017, the card had multiple sales above $1,500. I mean, you know, there was the biggest sale was a BGS 10 at $3,000. Then there were multiple BGS 9.5s at around $2,500, all within about a 2-month span. And then there was a PSA 9 or 10 sale for like $1,500. Just massive, massive numbers all in 2018, right? That's because Correa, the Astros, they were in the news. News value was driving that card. Now, I think it's a beautiful card. I think he's an important part of Astros history. So, yeah, I would like it. I wait a little while. Now, I'll grant you it's been 7 years. I'll wait a little while. I win it for, you know, pennies on the dollar at auction. I'm just buying the aesthetics value, right? And it fits my collection. That's kind of a long tangent to explain why we need to focus on the aesthetic value of cards. Cards that we are going to like in the long term. Because if we don't do that, we are going to overpay, we're going to overbuy, we're going to end up with a lot of cards that we paid too much for that we don't actually want, and then we're not going to be happy with our collection, right? So, long way around on that one. And keeping with longevity, one of the things with longevity, and when I say longevity, I mean, am I going to appreciate the card after owning it for 3 years, right? That's really the test. After I own the card for 3 years, am I still going to be able to look at it and be like, this is a banger. I'm pretty happy to have this in my collection. I enjoy looking at it. Is it a card you can put on your wall after owning it for 5 years and be like, yeah, it's a great card. That was a great purchase. Go me from 5 years ago, right? Longevity. One thing that I've noticed for the cards that pass the longevity test for me, they have complexity to them. There's multiple aspects to the card that I like. And this starts to go into, what is your stunning standard? What type of cards do you like? What cards do you enjoy? You think about autographs. There's a million different ways to get autographs in the hobby. There's through the mail. There's, on-card in-person autos for rookies. There's, obviously on-card autos. Then you have on-card, do you like blue, black, red? What ink do you like? Gold. Do you like the gold on black that some cards do? That's nice. Do you like stickers? Do you like the clear sticker, or do you like the early 2000s silver sticker? What do you like? There's, just talking about autos only, there's almost infinite ways, right, to enjoy autos. And so when you find what it is you like, for myself, right, I like blue ink on card with a white background. That to me is beautiful and clean. Upper Deck's been doing it for forever. I think it's the like pinnacle, peak way to do an autograph. So if I have a card that's like that, it's got that nice auto, that's one aspect that I enjoy about the card. If that's the only aspect I enjoy about the card, I'm probably going to get tired of the card over time. So then what other aspects? Then you start, does it have a patch? Does the patch meet, whatever fancies your taste? Does it have etching? Does it have foiling? Does it have a refractor finish? Does it have the color refractor finish that you like? There's infinite ways to think about, how do I really like the card? One of my more niche things that I enjoy about cards, when I look at cards today, some companies are really doing a great job. Topps, Panini, okay, Topps is doing a great job on some products, is what I meant to say. Think about Topps Dynasty. Topps Dynasty is phenomenal. It has etching. You've got that kind of gold foil on there. Beautiful photographs, on-card, blue autos, all things that I love. Beautiful patches. There's a variety of patches you can get there. What's one thing I don't like about Topps Dynasty? I don't like the back. I hate that Topps and Panini, manufacturers in general, have given up on the back of cards. When you turn a Topps Dynasty beautiful card on the front, you turn it over and all it says is, congratulations, you've received an authentic Topps autograph from such and such player. The material is not from any specific event or season. I hate that. I absolutely hate that. They make this beautiful, wonderful card on the front, and then on the back, they just gave up. They didn't do anything. They put no effort in the back. I really don't like that. So one of my favorite sets of all time is 1999 Bowman Football. And one of the reasons I love that is because on the back of those Bowman sets, they put so much information. Of course, you have the players, height, weight, draft position, all that kind of stuff. But then you have the Bowman resume, the Bowman bio, and all this kind of stuff. And you get some personal aspects about the player. And I just remember as a kid, I just enjoyed reading the back of those cards. It was just interesting. And even old Topps from the 90s, it was just, it's so funny. You get like a 1999 Topps Ripken, and if it's a young player, there's all this information about the player, and then they're like one line of stats. But then a Ripken card from the late 90s, it's like the whole thing is stats. He's got so many stats, they just fill it up when they do year by year. So all that to say, there's a lot of different ways to do backs. And that's another way that you can appreciate the card. It's just another aspect of the card that you can appreciate. So going back to the idea of complexity and longevity, right? Complexity drives longevity. If the card has complexity that you like, if it has many different aspects that you like, that is going to increase the longevity of the card in your collection. And one thing I've noticed with cards like this for me, if I take one of these great, stunning cards out of my collection, if I look at it, I can look at it today and just really appreciate one aspect of the card. Then I put it away, go look at it a week later, and then I can appreciate a whole nother aspect of the card, right? I have a card right now. I have a 2008 gold refractor, 2-color patch on-card auto, Bowman Sterling, Peyton Manning. I like the image. I like the auto. I like the gold refractor. I like the patch. I like the 2-color patch. The patch is red and white, which is really unusual, of course, for Peyton Manning, which is, it only played in the Colts, for the Colts in 2008. So, I mean, I can look at that card one day and just really appreciate the auto. The next day I can look at it and just appreciate the patch. The next day I can look at it and just appreciate the gold refractor. The next day I can look on the back and appreciate the back because they still had pretty significant information on the back of those cards. So when you have a card that you can appreciate multiple levels of the card, and each level on its own is enough for you to appreciate it for some time, that is going to help drive the longevity of that card, right? The complexity, you enjoying the complexity of that card is going to drive longevity in your collection, and longevity in your collection, right? The ability for you to appreciate the card for many years after owning it is what, puts it in that stunning standard for me. Now we're going to talk about a practical exercise because, this has not been necessarily an easy thing for me to figure out, right? Like I said, I've been collecting since '99, been collecting 20 years. I think it's really only just now that I have finally figured out exactly what I like. Because, I like to say you don't want to boil the ocean, but that's kind of what it felt like I've been doing for a long time, was trying a lot of different shoes on, right? Trying a lot of different cards out and seeing what I liked, seeing what my style was, seeing what worked for me. And, that sucker took off, huh? And so a good exercise for you, you could take out your top 5 cards. Take out your favorite 5 cards in your collection. Lay them out on your desk. What do they have in common? Is it the player? Is it some nostalgia? Is it a color? Is it an auto? Is it a patch? Is it etching? What different attributes do they have in common? That's what you like, right? If those are the 5 cards that you could look at and really enjoy, your 5 favorite cards, then those are the aspects that you like. And you can have some variance and some variety. I'm not saying every card needs to be the exact same. I'm just saying it's beneficial for us to identify exactly what type of cards that we like, instead of kind of testing the waters and trying out a lot of different cards because they're hyped or they're in the news or it's a new big thing, whatever. So there you go. There's a practical exercise for you to knock out. That's most of what I wanted to get to, but I got a good fire going, so I'm going to talk a little bit more. This fire pit, great, by the way. This is a mobile fire pit. I wish the hole was a little bit bigger, I suppose. I got some big sticks over here I got to throw in. But, I'm on my back porch. And underneath the fire pit, believe it or not, it's not hot. It doesn't get hot under the fire pit, so it's really great. You can put it just on your deck or whatever, and you don't have to worry about it scorching anything or burning anything, so on. I had one more thing, but because I talked about that daggum fire pit, it's just escaped me. But I had one more thing I wanted to talk about with longevity. Oh, yeah, I want to talk about this. I don't worry. I kind of don't care. But I do worry a little bit that people hear me say some of this stuff and think that I'm saying you can only buy $1,000 cards. You can only buy absolute, bangers, from a monetary perspective. Or every card has to be, some massive RPA. That's not what I'm saying. You can enjoy a 1972 Topps base card the same way you can enjoy a 2015 RPA, beautiful whatever player. But you don't have to enjoy both, right? You don't have to enjoy both. You can enjoy both. You can enjoy, but you can also enjoy one over the other. You're allowed to do whatever you want. When I'm talking about stunning standard, museum quality, your museum collection, it is about you. It's not about what my opinion is on what's stunning, on what's awesome. It's about your opinion. And your opinion, there could be 75-cent cards that fit that. And you've got, a slew of reasons. You like to collect old top sets. You like the texture of the cards from the 70s. You like, 70s basketball tops. So groovy, right? It's awesome. It's such a time capsule of an era. Like, it's pretty special. Dude, that sucker is burning. That sucker was ready to go. It was dry. So when I talk about this stuff, I just don't want people to get the impression that I'm only talking about, massive cards made in the last, 10, 20 years. No, I'm saying the entire span, all cards, any card can fit, right? But you need to be honest with yourself on what your scope of collection is and what really stands out to you as special. Because if you're not honest with yourself, if you don't do that soul searching to figure out what it is you like, you're going to be in that position where instead of building your museum, you're building your mausoleum, right? So we need to build our museums. So we need to do the work to figure out what we actually like. And some of that is trial and error. And basically what I'm trying to do with this kind of conversation is to help save you some time, right? To help you soul search and figure out exactly what it is that you like. So that you don't have to spend 20 years figuring it out. The sooner you figure it out, the better it's going to be. Because, another piece of this that I in my head I connect. Charlie Munger, right-hand man to Warren Buffett for, basically his whole life. It's getting warm. He would say, don't get in the way of compounding. And I think about that with my collection too. Because what I've done in the past where I would let the dopamine monster come in and buy cards I didn't really want, and in the end I end up just selling. What happens is, I can waste 3 years of buying and selling and not really add anything significant to my collection because I wasn't focused on what I was really trying to acquire, right, to build for my museum. So if you go through one of those periods and you sell everything that you bought for 3 years, you probably lost money, right? Even if you made a little bit of money, you lost a lot of time. Where if instead of doing that, you just every month just bought one card that was really special to you, fit your scope of collection, hit your stunning standard, then after that 3 years, you would have 36 awesome cards. And as time goes on, there's continued, if you really appreciate them, that appreciation I feel is going to get deeper and deeper the longer that you have it, when they, hit all these bells, when they hit all these check marks. And so don't get in the way of compounding. By doing a lot of activity and a lot of buying and selling and trading, you are interrupting your collection because you're constantly resetting it. Whereas if you can figure out what your scope is and what you find is stunning, you're just going to keep growing that collection and, getting deeper into that space. And then over time, you're really building a significant museum that fits your taste, right? So, yeah, that's what I want to talk about. You can buy over any span of time. Don't interrupt compounding. Buy cards that, meet your stunning standard. Build your museum. We're looking for museum quality here. Yeah. One last thing. Going back to the aesthetic value versus news value. If you can step out of the news value, if you can get away from the dopamine monster and the current events and the current news, if you can step out of that space and look back in time, your purchases are going to be so much better. What do I mean by? I mean, the hobby in 2005 looked a lot different than it does today. The cards that were made looked different. The players in the sets were different. You know, everything was different. Today, in 2026, when we look back to 2005, everything is known. We know everything about the players from that time. We know everything about the sets. Everything that is going to be made has been made. Everything's out there. All the information is out there. So you really get to make educated purchases when you go back and buy 10, 15, 20 years ago. But when you're buying today, you know, you see so many people buying downtowns and kabooms, and they look cool. I'm not going to argue with you. I see a lot of people saying now that's going to be the PMGs of this era. It may not be, though, guys. It may not be. And so if you're buying in the current news, if you're buying that news value, you know, there's a potential that not just for the player, but for the cards itself, there's a potential that the demand for that type of card, or that the hobby's opinion of that card, can change pretty drastically. And, you know, 5-7 years from now, we could be in a space where we just hate kabooms or downtowns. We think they're overprinted, you know, who knows, whatever. But if you wait some time, you know, the truth kind of shakes out. You know, the cards that are really special from that era, they tend to reveal themselves over time. So if you're buying in the past, if you're buying 7, 8, 9, 10, 15 years ago, you tend to just have a little bit more certainty about the cards that you're buying, right? The players' careers are more certain. The cards themselves and where they stand in the hobby are more certain. And I mean, from what I'm seeing right now, it's just, there's so much strength in the 90s stuff right now. Yeah, I think that stuff's even rising a little bit because people are really figuring out that stuff truly was special. It's not coming back. That's a 101 era. And if you want to buy into the 90s, if you're nostalgic for it, that's your only time to buy into it in the 90s. You know, they're not going to replicate that. So really, if you can step away from news value, the dopamine monster, and buy the aesthetic value, you know, I think you're going to be happier with your collection and with your buying over time. But one real last thing I'm going to say, I don't ever want to say this again. I'm just going to say it this one time. So if you're still here, thanks. I appreciate you. I say a lot of things on this channel, and I think people think I present it as facts. You know, I say it very, very matter-of-factly, I suppose. But it is my opinion. The reason I don't say it's my opinion is because it's obvious that it's my opinion. This is my channel. It's a subjective matter. I can't give you facts. All I can give you is my opinion, right? So if I say something like, this is, you know, the way to collect, I know that there's other ways to do it. This is my opinion. It's obvious that it's my opinion. I don't need to say it every video because it's obvious it's my opinion. Just one thing I want to throw out there. So this sucker's burning hot. I'm going to enjoy the rest of this. Have me a little cup of coffee. I forgot I have my coffee out here. Have me a little cup of coffee, finish my cigar, and have a good night. I hope y'all have a good rest of your day, night, whatever it is you're doing. Until next time, my friends, as always, keep collecting.